Hi, it's Andrew Collins here, and it's that time of the year where I get the first copies of my new book to open, and I want to do a unboxing of it so you get an idea of exactly how I feel when I first get to see the book. So the book in question is Origins of the Gods, co-authored with my friend and colleague Greg Little, who I collaborated on with the last book, Denisovan Origins. And in this one, we've taken the matters on to the next level, really. In fact, to try and really put into perspective, not just the origins of civilization, but also what type of influence might have come to bear on human development of innovation and technology all the way through from the beginning 1.75 million years ago, when we created the first so-called Julian hand axe, which is this beautiful multifaceted multifunction tool that was created by the early Homo erectus people, but all the way through. And of course, we've had indications that we may have been helped along the way since books like Chariots of the Gods by Eric von Daniken. And Eric has actually written the foreword to this new book because he supports the new way that we're beginning to look at the idea of intrusion into our world by influences, entities, beings, intelligences that are quite clearly non-terrestrial. Now, obviously, up to now, we've looked at everything in terms of extraterrestrial, but of course, for a while, people have suspected that there may have been a interdimensional, or as we like to call it in the book, transdimensional influence involved with human evolution through everything from transformative experiences, altered states of consciousness, most typically associated with shamanism, dreams, visions, art, poetry, and of course encounters with mysterious objects which since the 1940s we've referred to as flying saucers or UFOs, or more recently UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, but which for the most part have a very similar type of background and appearance, and that is as objects of light, whether they be circular, whether they be oval, whether they be more complex, whether they be groups of light. And these lights have been seen to act in a way which suggests intelligence, as if they are maybe even themselves, life forms. But of course, at the same time, the whole idea that UFOs are extraterrestrial vehicles, spaceships from other planets, has been at the forefront of any theories to do with why they are here. And that continues to this day. I mean, even in terminology that we use, they were flying, they landed, they hovered. All of these are suggestive that we're dealing with nuts and bolts spacecraft. And indeed, we probably are. Because Carl Sagan, as Greg points out in his half of the book, said as early as the early 1960s that it was inevitable, and he said this in a paper, a scientific paper, that Earth has been visited on many occasions since humanity began. So if somebody like Carl Sagan comes to that conclusion, who am I to disagree? And I do believe that that is the case. We have been visited by extraterrestrials, and that some UFOs could be extraterrestrial vehicles. But there's something else going on, and I think it's possibly even bigger, and it has been behind the development of humanity since the beginning. And as I said, that we see in terms of transdimensional contact, transdimensional intelligences being involved. And their biggest interface between them and us is plasma. Plasma is the false state of matter. It has been shown theoretically, at least, to hold a multi-dimensional environment, an environment which doesn't just have 3 dimensions of space like we see around us now, which is essentially width, length, and height, the dimensions of space, but a 4th dimension. And that plasma itself could therefore be a conduit, possibly even a portal, doorway, or even a wormhole into other realms that coexist with us. What those realms are, I go into in the book. But anyway, before we go on any further, let's have a look at this book, shall we? For the first time. This is part of a, oh, the blade's gone for some reason. Don't know why. It was there. So I'll just have to tear it open then. And here we go. My first ever copy of Origins of the Gods. There we go. There's quite a load of them in that box, but there we go. Origins of the Gods. Okay, by myself and Greg Little, published by Inner Traditions, or Bear and Company as the imprint name is that they use on the cover of the book. And the subtitle of it, let's have a look at that, is The Qesem Cave, Skinwalkers and Contact with Transdimensional Intelligences. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to introduce why those particular elements are in the subtitle. And I mean, there could have been 100 in all honesty, but the publishers had to cut them down to 3, and these were the ones that they saw as most relevant to showing this book to the public. The Qesem Cave. What's the Qesem Cave? It's located just outside of Tel Aviv. It was discovered in the year 2000 and has been the subject of a very intense excavation project by the University of Tel Aviv under the leadership of Ran Bakai and Avi Gopher, 2 very well-known Israeli archaeologists. And essentially what they found is 2 things that are significant. One is that the earliest form of shamanism anywhere in the world took place in this cave, and takes the form of a swan bone that was deliberately removed from the carcass of the bird and was clearly used in cultic practices, and at the end of its life was actually placed in a location within the cave, which might be seen as the Holy of Holies. So that suggests that the shamans of this period, which we're talking the lower Paleolithic, so from around 400,000 to 200,000 years ago, were adorning themselves in swan paraphernalia and contacting the other world and making contact with otherworldly intelligences. But at the same time, these people from the Qesem Cave were also becoming the smartest people on the planet. And it seems unlikely that this was going on in isolation when they're also inventing and writing the book on shamanism for the first time. So, is it possible that these new insights, new innovations of technology, which involved everything from the earliest use of fire in pits over sustained periods to schools of rock with the different uses of brand new styles of creating stone tools, to the earliest fridges, I kid you not, read the book, to the earliest packed food, and lots of other firsts for humanity, which were clearly innovations that nobody else was doing on the planet, that, or certainly as far as we're aware at this time. So is it possible that they were being fed information, or that their minds were being triggered into creating new innovations by their contact with otherworldly realms and intelligences? Well, you might say, well, what's all this got to do with UFOs or transdimensional intelligences? Well, a short distance away from the Qesem Cave, which is just outside of Tel Aviv, is a very important holy mountain called Mount Garrison. Now, this was the original dwelling place of God, according to the book of Genesis. And it was here that Abraham arrived in the Holy Land and first had a vision of, you know, the God of the Israelites, who basically said, look, this is your promised land and build your first altar here. And it was where Jacob, for instance, fell asleep and saw the angels going between heaven and earth. It was where Isaac was. It was where Joshua, when he entered the promised land, just after Moses had died on the east side of the River Jordan, he crossed over. The first place he goes to do the big ritual with the Ark of the Covenant is Mount Garrison, and the city beneath it, which was then called Shechem and is today known as Nablus, and it's in the Palestinian territory. So I was there in 2019. The whole story of everything that happened when I was out there is in the book. So that's why the Qesem Cave is important. But sorry, what I forgot to mention is that the significant thing that I found out about Mount Garrison is that God appears, God manifests on Mount Garrison, his dwelling place, the sole place in theory that he dwelt, in the form of the Shekinah. The Shekinah is the presence of God, which appears as a light, like a blinding light. And it's this same light that would be seen above the Ark of the Covenant when that was in use. And of course, the Ark of the Covenant was a mobile form of carrying around the God of the Israelites, so that if they wanted to talk to him, they could just power it up or whatever they did with their rituals, and God would appear in the form of this column of light, the Shechem, sorry, the Shekinah, that's the correct term. So it is no coincidence, therefore, that we find that Mount Garrison is also a place where mysterious lights are seen to this day. And I actually went to the top of the mountain and I spoke to one of the highest official priests of the Samaritans, the people that live on the top of Mount Garrison and claim to be the true survivors of the original Israelites. And I asked them, I said, you know, are these lights seen today? And they said, oh, yes, yeah. I said, mostly, strange enough, they said they're green in colour. I don't know why they're green. Something to do with frequencies, no doubt. But what they also said, I said, well, what are they? And through an interpreter, the word that came back was malak. And as soon as I heard that, I knew what that meant. It means angels. These lights, the manifesting lights, what we call UFOs, are seen as the angels of God, the messengers of God, still showing his presence on the mountain itself. So do we dare to even suggest that the people of the Qesem Cave may also have seen these lights and been attracted to them and actually had encounters with the intelligences involved with them, and in doing so established this connection, this contact, in the same way that people have UFO encounters today, and they then continue to have this contact with the entities, the intelligences that they believe are associated with the UFOs? I think personally that the answer is yes, absolutely. So that's the reason why Qesem Cave is important. Well, that and many other reasons which you'll read. Skinwalkers is the second part of the subtitle. So what does that mean? Well, Skinwalkers is the supernatural form that a Navajo witch, and I say that word loosely, more appropriately a shaman, takes during rituals where they want to go out in an astral form, generally at night, and they can be seen in this supernatural form, which for the most part is wolf-like. It can be other animals, but the most common animal associated with skinwalkers is the wolf. Now, for many reasons, skinwalkers have appeared in the area which is today known as Skinwalker Ranch in the Uinta Basin in Utah. And as you probably know, it's one of the strongest portal sites in the world at the moment, certainly the most popular. And paranormal activity, UFO activity has been going on there in one form or another for at least 150 years, and almost certainly beyond that. And basically, what I show is that sites like these, which have an incredible intense geology, I've established that there is a fault line going all the way through, or certainly on the left side, the west side of the so-called Northern Mesa, on the north side of Skinwalker Ranch, which is where I was at a couple of years ago. And that this is where most of the phenomena actually takes place, or is seen to be associated with. And the local Inuit First Peoples in the area call this mesa the path of the Skinwalker, because this was the place that they clearly associated this phenomena with. I mean, I won't go into all of the politics as to why they believe it's a Skinwalker. It's all in the book. And one of the reasons I'm saying this is that as far back as 1982, I read a really important book called Earthlights by Paul Devereaux, which basically showed that place was very important to where UFOs appeared, and that in geology was crucial to understanding the zones that are created to allow the manifestation of UFOs. I mean, they've been known by various names in the past, window areas, portals, hotspot, UFO hotspots, but very generally there is a criteria of geology associated with them: fault lines, tectonic plates, magnetic anomalies, metals, metal ores like iron, copper, and also certain types of minerals, particularly minerals that are able, that when they're squeezed, they produce electricity, and that electricity breaks out into the atmosphere, into the environment, and seems to allow the manifestation of UFOs. Now, I'm not saying this is the only answer, because obviously we know that UFOs can come down from the higher atmosphere as well, but certainly close to ground, the manifestations of many lights, many plasma forms, as I show in the book, and Greg and I obviously show in both our different parts, are the result of manifestations of plasma. And the plasma can not only be intelligent, but it also becomes like a gateway or a doorway into 4 or multiple dimensional environments. So that's the reason why Skinwalkers has been chosen. And then the third part, contact with transdimensional intelligences. Well, this is something which I've been looking at for some while and is featured in other books of mine, like Alien Energy, which came out originally in 1994, and also more recently in Light Quest, came out in 2012, where my conclusions were that the UFO intelligences, the light intelligences, the plasma intelligences were transdimensional in nature. And I wanted to try and pin down the science of all of this. And that's what I've been doing in my part of the book of Origins of the Gods. And I mean, it's a complex subject. I mean, there's chapters here, for instance, called multidimensionality, and another one here called the entanglement of all. Now, these are all about the importance of quantum entanglement, the idea that 2 particles become entwined or linked, and no matter how far away they get from each other, they still retain that same connection through a non-local process. In other words, there's nothing connecting them directly, but there's an information transfer, an information and energy transfer through what they call a non-local medium. What was called by Basil Hiley, who was a theoretical physicist, the pre-space, the realm of pre-space. And that's somewhere behind our physical reality. And it's in this realm of pre-space, I think, that the information transfer takes place, not only of entanglement in general, but of the communication of intelligences that are beyond human terrestrial origin, and that they can manifest through plasma, they can manifest directly through them into the mind, using entanglement, and that it's them that's been with us for a long time. Now, where do they come from? Where do these entities exist when they're not you know, inhabiting UFOs, if you like. And I think that the answer to that is somewhere called the bulk, somewhere we also call the outside, which is a realm outside of normal space-time. It's been written about in great detail within string theory, in particular the area of string theory called M theory, which is about superstrings and supergravity. And I'm not going to go into the brain. I can talk to you about that and about brain worlds, the bulk, whatever. Again, this is all in the book, basically. So beyond that, what can I say? Well, it looks good. I mean, it's quite a heavy book. It's going to be a few bob for postage, but hopefully you can get it at a good discount price at Amazon or Barnes and Noble or any other online bookstore that you may choose. And very clearly, I'll have a few of these around, in theory, to sell at a few of the conferences. Eventually, when I get a large enough quota to be able to do that. But at the moment, obviously, I'm just going to cherish them, you know, and go through this myself and find the first error. That's always a good fun exercise when you get your new book, is how long does it take before you find the first error? It's going to be there somewhere, but you just have to hope that it's a small one, okay? I mean, thank God in my entire career of about 15 books, I've only cocked up about once majorly, and that was nothing to do with the contents. It was just a couple of the pages were swapped around and just made no sense of that particular chapter. But other than that, we are hoping, and I'm sure that everything will be fine here. So that's that. I shall be talking about this book, not at Megalithomania, but I will have probably a few copies of it, which is in May. I'm talking about Karahan Tepe, and the origins of civilization, the civilization of the ancients, Anunnaki watchers, etc. But at the Chariots of the Gods event, Chariot of the Gods Expo, as it's called, in June 24th to 26th in Blackpool in the UK, you'll see me talking specifically about this subject. And who will be there? Eric von Daniken. So and also obviously Giorgio and various other of my friends and colleagues. So hope to see some of you either at Megalithomania or at Blackpool. And if not, I'm on tour with Hugh Newman and JJ Ainsworth in Turkey in September. So maybe you want to come out there and we can talk all about this. Anyway, that's it for the moment. So this is all available. You can order it now. So I'm going to click this off and I'll see you again soon. And if you like this video, tick it, because I do other videos on Denisovans. Ah, yes, of course. I forgot to mention, there's a really good chapter in here all about the very latest Denisovan research and how that obviously relates to the story. So, okay, cheers. And Greg as well, just out of interest, will be doing his own videos on his contribution to the book, which I'll let him introduce. So that's it for now.